everybody, welcome back. This is Lucidity. If you are not caught up on what I've been doing these past 2 weeks, I am essentially going over my time in Osaka from the beginning to the end in honor of the fact that it has now been 10 years since I first studied abroad in Osaka. Last time we spoke about this, it was my first weekend being in Japan, and I spent most of it looking for food that I would later on go to not really eat. But the point is that today we are going to be talking about my first days on the Kansai Gaidai campus, which is where I went to school for a semester in the spring of 2010. First things first, the dorm that I was living in when I was in Japan was one of 4 dorms, and I was in the dorm that was brand new and further away from the other 3 and a little bit ways off campus. In my first week there, partially because I have social anxiety and find it hard to meet people, and partially because I felt like I was in a dorm where a lot of students already had kind of known each other. They came with friends and they sort of clicked off really fast, and I was just kind of struggling to make any friends. And the thing is that at Kansai Gaidai, at any given point during the year, there are 700 foreigners on campus. And all 700 of these foreigners are in a separate building on campus where they all take classes together, and only a couple of the Japanese students will take classes with them. And those are the ones that are relatively proficient in English and are given permission sort of to take courses with the other foreigners. Mind you, when I got there in the spring semester, the Japanese students in the regular Japanese classes were all on spring break, while in that separate building with me and the 700 foreigners, we were operating on a Western schedule. So they weren't coming until the start of spring, which was in April. So for January and all of March, us 700 foreigners were separated in a separate building while no Japanese students were on campus, unless they were taking a course with us, which was a very small population. Also, there were no clubs because the clubs would start back in April as well. So there were very few, if any, opportunities to meet people that were local while I was there. Being that I have social anxiety at this time, way worse than I have it today, I felt like I was in a sea of people from all around the world, and I was sort of drowning in it. So on that first day, all of us come together and we walk from the dorm to the campus. We all have our orientation, and we find out that we're going to be doing a series of testing. So you can choose your classes, and then you have to test into a Japanese class. So I take this test, and I do very well on it, actually. I test into level 4. And level 4 is exactly where I want to be. I am put in this class on the first day, and the teacher is amazing. He is hilarious. Everybody in the school says he's the best teacher, and he is so much fun to have as a teacher. So I am very happy, but I find out at the end of that first week, we will be doing another test, and if we do poorly on it, we will get demoted to the class below us. So that first week, I really enjoy being in this class, but I get to the test on Friday, and I'm kind of like not the best test taker when it comes to sort of math, language, certain things. I'm better with essays, I've always been, and better with like short answer. But when it comes to the kind of like multiple choice questions, I get kind of anxious. And in this situation, I was exceptionally anxious because I felt like there was a lot on the line. And that all sort of plays into why I do kind of poorly on the test. And I think I just like barely failed. And as a result, I get demoted to level 3. And when I walk into level 3 that next Monday, that teacher is the meanest, scariest teacher in like the entire school as well. Now I've gone from one end to the complete opposite, and I don't like her, she doesn't like me, and for the rest of the semester, neither of us are big fans of the other, and I don't end up doing very well in that class. But on the other hand, the 3 other classes that I take, I absolutely fall in love with. And this is kind of like part of my saving grace throughout the semester, because there's a lot of up and downs, but those courses give me this sense of stability. And basically in the morning, we do the language classes, and it's like the whole morning. And then the whole afternoon is us doing these culture classes. And I had, I think, a Japanese society class that was kind of a sociology class. I have a Japanese cultural class, and that kind of is like popular culture, music, anime, manga, media, all sorts of things that are culture related. Love those 2 classes, but my favorite class is I take a Zen Buddhism class. And my teacher's amazing, and the texts that we read are so interesting. And at the end of that class in that semester, we actually get to go to Arashiyama, and we go to a Zen Buddhist temple, and we practice Zazen in an actual Zen Buddhist temple, which was amazing. And that was one of my favorite experiences. And I actually use what I learned in Zen Buddhism when I get to the end and I'm writing my thesis paper for undergrad, and I write about Hirakata City and her experience with Buddhism and how it informs her feminist perspective. So, little nerdy point there, but this is one of my favorite experiences that I've ever had. Things start to turn around at the end of my first or second week when I finally make my first friend ever at Kansai Gaidai. And this friend I actually meet through Twitter, because the internet is an easier place for me to make friends at the time. So essentially on Twitter, there was a bunch of people exchanging information back and forth, like, hey, who's going to Kansai Gaidai? I'm going. And one person reached out to me and said, hey, when we get there, we should meet up. And finally, at the end of the first or second week, that's what we did. And once we met, we instantly hit it off. With him, I was able to be more comfortable going out and exploring the world around me. We went and took the bus for the first time, we went downtown, we went to different shops, and we basically just had a fun time together. A couple of weeks in, he would actually invite me to go to Tokyo with him. And his friends were organizing it, the friends from his school, so he said, look, I have the details, they're gonna get the hostel, they're gonna do everything, they're gonna get the bus ticket, just give me the money and I will give it to them, and they will get the ticket for you. This ends up being a very big mistake, and I didn't know it at the time. Nowadays, absolutely nobody is allowed to buy my tickets for me for any sort of trip. So this will be a lesson learned in the future, and we'll get to that when we get to that. Unfortunately, there are a couple of red flags that start to show up, but it doesn't hit a major head until a little bit later. And I think the first thing I remember is when we found out that we were in the same class together. I think it was the culture class, and he says, come on, let's go sit in the back. And I don't feel comfortable sitting in the back. One of the things with my anxiety that I've learned is that if I sit in the front, I don't feel all the eyes of the people behind me, and it just feels like I'm in a class with me and the professor, and I'm able to talk, and I'm able to listen, and be a participant in that class. But he was adamant about going into the back, and I was like, no, I prefer the front. Come into the front with me. And he got super mad, and he went to the back, and then he got really mad at me for like the rest of the day. And that was the first red flag. It would get worse a little bit later, but we can talk about that in the next video.